a reminder, we are recording from the beginning.
Hi. We're getting there. We're getting there.
Looks really nice. And I apologize. I thought the link had gone out. Before last week.
Oh, yeah, well, it's all right. I'll need to get a list. Apparently there's more people than I knew about. I know I got Luann and Maureen at the end, well, new, but I thought I had extra kits and they're all gone and Rhonda didn't get one.
Okay.
She's gonna wait till March.
Okay.
So she was up.
Right,
Not sure.
right. Okay, let me make a copy of the assignment sheet right now.
Okay.
You'll have that.
Oh, this is from Maria. When she comes in.
All right, we'll put the watercolor document down.
Hello.
Linda.
Hi, Brenda. Hi, Lisa. Hi. I don't know who else is there. Marianne.
So Linda.
Oh,
Linda?
it should be. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, Ellen's going to be like 10 minutes late.
Oh, all right.
She'll just slide in. So she's ready to go when she gets there. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Hi, Rhonda. Hi, Marianne.
I had to go change it. I'm in the loft and it's hot up here.
Oh.
Later on.
It'll dry fast.
Yeah, that's for
You'll
sure.
probably have to adjust to that. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, how's everybody?
Good. Okay, thank you. Oh, yeah.
There are two kits. So who did you want to do?
Rhonda, but she was kind of up in the air whether she wanted to take February or not. Oh, they said there weren't any there, so I told her. Yeah, that's okay. It worked out fine. Yeah, okay, good. That's good. Okay, thank you. We're on record now. We're on record now, so don't say anything bad about me, okay?
Really? Where am I? How come I can't see me?
We'll just wait a couple minutes. I see Nancy. Are you there, Nancy?
Yep.
Hi, Nancy.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Got a few more people coming.
There we go.
Everyone needs to remember to mute themselves.
Yes, that's right.
Can you hear me today?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Oh, hi, Louise.
Hi, last week couldn't hear me, the week before. I'm like,
Yeah.
waiting,
I
and I don't know what the heck happened.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
I think maybe my speaker was low.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we're at the wagon wheel?
Yeah, we're finishing up the wagon wheel first thing. If you haven't done that yet.
I got the bird on.
Yeah, that's next. That's coming up.
Oh,
Hey, Linda, this is Nancy. I'm gonna have to log out at around 4:20
Okay.
because I have to log into work at 4:30.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. Thanks.
Yeah. Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Linda. How you feeling?
Very good, thank you.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Yeah, me too.
No, that's not fun.
No, especially when you don't know why.
Yeah, they never figured out what mine was either. They figured maybe just some sort of a virus.
Yeah.
So,
so I probably have all the wrong colors out.
Now today for colors, you're gonna need burnt umber, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna.
I only have burnt sienna. I don't have the other one.
Burnt umber. Oh, you have Van Dyke brown. You can use that, Louise.
Somewhere. Okay.
Well, I'll just wait for Jean's coming in and then we'll get started because it's after 3. Hi, Jean.
I just came in from shoveling.
Oh, gee.
My son went to Arizona for the week. He's my snowblower man.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it's just mounting up.
Yeah. Hi, Audrey.
There's Audrey's iPad.
Yeah. There, Audrey?
I'm here finally, thank you.
Okay, good. And Jean? Are you there, Jean? Must be having trouble. I think first thing you want to get ready is some cerulean blue with a little bit of water mixed into it.
So just a little tiny bit.
just a tiny bit. We're gonna just add a little bit of shadowing to the snow that is on the fence, the little mounds of snow on the fence
And how big
at
a,
the lower edge.
so how big a blot of the blue?
Oh, just a pinprick.
Yeah, I got a
Yeah,
big
and some
blot.
water.
See, that's the thing. I don't know how to mix.
Yeah, just a tiny. Do you have your colors out on your palette?
Yeah, well, I
Yeah.
have,
So just wet the cerulean blue as it's on your palette. Just take a little
although
bit
I
off.
clean my palette every time.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
You don't have to do that. You can let them dry.
okay.
Yeah, let them dry and then there's no waste. You just re-wet them when you need them the next time.
Yeah, okay. I wonder
So
on-
you're gonna want a really small brush. Small round. And your cerulean blue mixed with a little bit of water, so it's a little on the light side.
That's on the bright side.
Light side, lightly with water to lighten it.
Yeah, I'm adding more.
And then as the snow, right in here, as the snow sits on the fence, you're gonna put just some little dashes of blue, just a little spot of blue, right on the fence edge, but on the snow. Just drop in a little shape of blue. What
Linda,
was that?
everybody needs to mute their
Yeah.
screen because you're going in and out.
We're getting a lot of feedback.
Right.
If you can mute everybody, please. There we go.
David Gagner's not muted.
Rhonda, can you mute yours? Can you hit your mute button, Rhonda? Oh, I can't understand you. I can't understand you. It's all scrabbled. Think we got
Yeah,
it?
she's muted, yeah. That was the worst.
Okay, so
Could you start again? Could you start
Oh.
again?
yeah, so on the fence line, into the little mounds of snow that are on the fence, we're gonna put little shapes of blue, cerulean blue. Not all the way across, not like a line all the way across the fence, but in spots. And I'm just gonna bring this one up a little higher. Just little touches of blue along the top of the fence line. Just to shadow that little bit of snow that is on the fence, on the little bit of snow that's on the fence. Other side of the tree on the left. I'm gonna put a little bit in here. Another little spot, a space away. So just get a little bit of shading into that little bits of snow. And do the same thing on the bottom. Right on the snow, right on the fence line, you'll put your blue. And just drag across some little shapes. It separates the fence from the snow as well, so. And both sides. both sides of the fence. Little bits of blue. And then the same thing on the snow that is on the wheel. Oh, we really got some noise going, don't we? I can't tell where it's coming from, but Rhonda, can you mute? I think we got it. Thank you. And on the snow that's on the wheel, same thing, the lower edge of that, paint in a couple little rounded organic shapes of blue. Make sure you leave some white. Don't cover it all with blue, but add little bits of blue. On the left side, you can put it a little bit near the top, and then down the side, left side of the wheel. Just add little shapes of blue, not like an outline, just spotted shapes. And you can stick to the same small brush if you have a round, small round, if that's what you're using, to do the dry brush, which will be next. And that's going to be on the boards of the fence. Ultramarine blue mixed with a little bit, I'm sorry, burnt umber or Van Dyke brown, whichever one you have, mixed with a little bit of ultramarine blue, just tiniest bit. Oh, did you guys do the wash on the fence? Have you got it painted in burnt umber? Okay.
Yes.
I don't. Okay, thank you. I don't, so I'm gonna do my dry brush on the white paper. You should have a wash of burnt umber across your fence boards. And then you gotta let that dry before you do the dry brush. I think that was the last thing I said. You could do that on your own, is to paint in a wash of the burnt umber along the fence boards. So if you have that done, you can do the dry brush. I'm going to be doing the dry brush on white paper, but that's probably good because it'll show you better how it works out. So I'm going to take my burnt umber. You can add a little bit of cerulean blue if you have a little left over. You can add a little, I'm going to use up the cerulean blue that I had already. So you can add cerulean blue to the burnt umber and wet your small brush. And then you've got your brush wet with the burnt umber mix, and tap it on a paper towel to take off the excess water, okay? Just tap it and get the excess water. Then you're going to take your brush, and the dry brush is the same as we've done before. And some of you may not have done it yet, but you're going to lay your brush right horizontal to the, well, right across the flat of the paper. Lay the brush and drag the side of the brush across. And you're just using the body of the brush, not the tip, but the body of the brush. See how that gives it nice texture? And you want to do that across all the boards and make different, some darker places, some lighter places. But with the dry brush, it's important to tap your brush on a paper towel before you paint with the color, because you'll have too much water in your brush. So tap off the excess water. And I'll do the other side here. See if we can get that in the focus. There. Lay the brush flat against the paper. Drag the body of the brush across to pick up. What you're doing is skimming across the texture of the paper. So drag it across. And sometimes you have to tip it forward a little bit.
That would have been fun with birch trees in the.
Oh, you hear Luann and Maureen?
Yeah.
Okay, good. You can watch us finish this one up. And if you do want to get this project, what I have done in the past for other people, if you can't take the class or you missed the class, you can buy the project for $5.
Okay.
So if you want the this particular instruction packet with the birches and the wagon wheel, you can get that anytime.
All right. And you said that you're moving on to the bird next?
Yes, so you should have the bird all transferred.
Yeah.
Okay. And we ask that while we're having class that you mute your computer because we get feedback noises.
Yeah.
So you can mute, and then when you need to talk, just unmute.
Okay.
Okay, and we are recording so that you can get this later on YouTube if you want to do it again.
Nice.
So you, Luann and Maureen, you'll be able to see the whole thing because we recorded the beginning of this last week.
And YouTube, what are you on? Does it Senior Center?
They'll send you a link.
Okay.
Call in and ask Katie for the link to the YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
You should get it automatically because you're in the class, but sometimes she forgets. She should be, as soon as it's loaded, she usually sends it out to all the classes. Everybody been getting it okay? No? Okay, you have to call Katie if you want the YouTube link.
Okay. That's what I had to do with this.
Yeah. Okay. So we're doing the dry brush on top of a brown wash. Luann, I'm doing it on white paper, but you should, originally we have a wash on that fence board. If there's a wash, should be, everybody put in their wash of burnt umber. And I'm doing it on white paper because I was bad and didn't do my wash. But the dry brush for the texture goes on the ultramarine, the burnt umber wash after it has dried. Okay, I guess we did finish the birches last time, right? Is everybody get the birches done? Good, and the branches, you're all good with that? So the last thing is that on the wheel, there is some darkening on the inside of the rim. The left-hand side of the wheel, take some burnt umber and burnt sienna and make a mix, mostly burnt sienna, but darken it slightly with burnt umber. And then on the left side, can everybody see where I'm going here? Inside the rim, skipping the spokes, really, but the inside of the end of the triangle shape on the inside of the rim. So you're dividing the wheel in half, but by darkening half of it with a burnt umber, burnt sienna mix. See how that really makes it stand out now? And then a little bit at the bottom. So that's on the left side of the wheel. And there is also a little dry brush on the right side of the wheel. And that you just drag your brush with that same burnt umber, burnt sienna mix. Just drag your brush a little bit lightly across the front of the wheel on the right side. The other very last thing on the wheel is that you can accent some of the spokes, not outlining all of them, but here and there, put a little dark line, just random here and there, just to kind of add some accent color. Not the whole length, but just here and there, I'm putting in a little bit of that dark mix. You don't have to do every single one, but just adds a little bit more interest. And I guess we did the center in Payne's Gray already, the axle. Okay, good. The very last thing, you want to get out a piece of paper or a tissue or paper towel and cover up your sky area, where your sky and your evergreens are, because we're going to do some spattering. For the fur, when we do the spattering on the top section of the painting, below the evergreens and down to the fence, this top section, you might want to cover the lower edge too, because there's no spattering in between the fence boards. The spattering goes up on the hill, so you might want to cover your top above cover your evergreens and your sky, and then cover your fence. Leave just the blue shaded area that is the top of the hill. And a brush with a nice spring to it that you can spatter by snapping it off of your finger. I find if you don't have a stiff brush, what works really good is a stencil brush, because it's very stiff. If you want to pick up a cheap stencil brush sometime, you can also use an old toothbrush or a new toothbrush that's dedicated to painting. A flat brush. Flat brushes have shorter bristles and they have a nice spring to them. So we're going to take a watery mix of burnt sienna. Load your brush, and then I take my finger. You might even want to cover up the trees if you have a small piece of paper. Let's see, I'll use this. You might want to cover up the trees, the birches and the other tree. So I'm working on just this little half. Take the brush and snap it off your finger, just like painting your finger, and it'll give you the little sprinkles. And then the other side, same thing. I do it at a horizontal angle, the spattering. I'm going horizontally, so I'm kind of falling through with the flow of the hill. And some spattering there. You can do it as light or as heavy as you want. Another thing you can do when you're spattering is to take a clean brush with a tiny bit of water on it, and you can come in and tap a little water onto the spatters. Changes this shape a little bit, gives you another little value sometimes, but you can do that if you want. Not going too fast? I'll slow down anyway, just in case. So you got 2 spots on the hill spattered. And now you might want to move your paper and cover the top half. Cover everything right down to the bottom of the wheel. So just this foreground little sloping hill below the wheel is open to spatter. Okay, the same thing on the lower hill, the foreground, watery burnt sienna. Cover up everything above, everything, the wheel and everything above. And then snap the brush across. You don't have to do the spattering, but I think it adds enough detail to make it a little more interesting. And then again, if you want to take a damp brush and tap over some of these little spatters, kind of drag the brush over them, it'll give a little bit more of a color, a light wash around them. If you want to do that, you can. Just a little bit of water and tap it on the area that you spattered. You don't always have to do that. It's up to you. And I think that's it for this one. Let you finish up. Get ready for your next bird. If you have to tape it down, I'll wait long enough so you can tape it down if you need to. I need to do that myself. Any questions on that? Did we cover everything?
We missed the fence by the
fence-
wheel.
The what?
The fence by the wheel.
Oh, you need to do the dry brush there. Have you painted it in burnt umber?
Yeah.
Okay, so you do need to do the dry brush on all the fence boards.
Yeah, it's above and below, right?
Yes,
Because you're white. By your
Yes.
wheel, you're all white. Isn't that supposed to be?
it's supposed to be burnt umber, but I didn't get the wash on.
All right.
Yeah, mine are white, but all 4 of those fence boards
Yeah.
should have a wash of burnt umber, and then you let it dry. And then you do the dry brush, drag the brush in a little
Okay.
darker value over them. They're all done the same way,
Okay.
okay?
Goodbye.
Okay, I'll get my bird ready here. I looked in the bird book and I could not identify exactly what kind of bird this is. The closest I could get, I got the picture online, so they didn't have it labeled as to what it was. The closest I could get with these colorings was a warbler.
Mhm.
So I just called it gray bird.
Let me mute myself again.
This one I did mention in the directions that you could mask out the edge of the bird if you wanted to. The only place it would be really important would be on the stomach area so that you could keep that white. If you do get some of the sky color on the back of the head or the back of the bird or the tail, it's those darker blues and grays will cover. So the only thing as far as if you were going to mask, I would just be necessary to do the stomach area, especially where it's white. But if you didn't, it's easy enough to paint around it. So you can just work with it that way. I don't like masking myself, so I try to avoid it as much as possible. And you're going to mix up cerulean blue with some water. I'm going to wet the paper first though, so I'm not ready for that point. I'll give you time to get ready here. While you're all kind of in a break here, I just wanted to say that I have tubes of Indian red. Now, Indian red is used on the water pump project. I was hoping that they were going to come in, ship to me so you could pick them up Monday with the kits, but they didn't come until yesterday. So if you do not have Indian red and you want, or if you do and you want another tube of it, I'm leaving a bag of tubes of Indian red at the front desk. So you can come in anytime and pick one up. There's no charge. And that's going to be used on the water pump. If you don't want to bother to get it and you don't have it, you can make a color for the water pump with cadmium red and burnt sienna. But the Indian red is just a little nicer to use. It's a terracotta color, like a clay pot color, and rusty kind of color. So pick up a tube anytime. Now I'm leaving them here today, so anytime it's convenient, you can pick up a tube of that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ready for the bird? Everybody looks good? Everybody ready to go? Okay. We're going to wet the paper first with clean water. Your water is probably pretty clean from still because we didn't do that much. But if you need to change your water, I'll give you a minute. You want to make sure you've got nice clean water when you're doing this cerulean blue wash. Can't seem to get into the middle of the screen here. How's that? I'm using my big wash brush. As soon as I get it out. Okay. If you're not comfortable with a big wash brush, try to get comfortable with it because it's kind of important to get your paper wet the quickest way with as much water as you can load onto there. One trick for going around objects with the flat, with this flat brush is that you lay the edge of the brush, so you're getting just the corner here. If you lay that flat against the object that you're painting and drag it around, that will follow the edge nicely. Instead of trying to go this way into the object, if you lay the flat and get the corner of the brush right against your line, it's easy to go around things. So, clean water and going around the bird. Keep going back for more water. Don't try to stroke one brush load all the way across the top. You won't have enough water. You want it nice and wet. I'm going to wet the outside areas first, and then go back and be more particular going around the bird. Go right over the branch. You don't have to avoid the branch. That can be cerulean blue because the color for the branch is darker. I'm starting to go around the bottom of my bird here with the edge of my brush over the feet. Go right over the feet. Go around the feathers, tail feathers, and down to the corner. Now the corner of my brush, I'm going to take that and go around my beak, starting at the beak, lay it flat, and then drag it, pressing a little bit to bend it down around the bird. Follow the pencil line. A little bit of wetness inside where the feet go. Just being careful to leave white paper at the bottom of his stomach there. And then back up into the beak. I'm gonna put the full width of the brush against the beak this time because it will cover the whole bottom of the beak. And then drag the edge corner of the brush right around the front of the bird. And then check your wetness by looking at an angle. Hold it up. And if it shines, you know you've got it all wet. I missed a spot down here. So if you've got it shiny all over, it's time to put the blue in. Mix your cerulean blue with some water on your palette. Let's make a little puddle with some light to medium tone of cerulean blue. And then I just take my big brush and kind of go back and forth, make little X's to drop in the color. Then I get a little bit of a more motion in the sky, I guess I would say. Careful around the bird. Doing it that way, kind of crisscross with your strokes, will give you a little bit more lights and darks instead of just a solid wash. Carefully around the bird, into the neck, right on just the edge of the brush. Draw the edge of the brush down. I make little X's usually, kind of slip slop. It's important to get right up to the pencil line on the bird so he doesn't look like he's got a halo around him in white. But very slowly and carefully bring the blue up to the edge of the line, up to the pencil line. Now there is a way of painting that gives you more time on a wet on wet project. is wetting it twice. This is kind of a small area, so I wasn't too concerned about the fact that I wouldn't have enough time to get it all wet because it's a small piece of paper. But if you're doing something large and you want a longer window of time to get your color in, you can wet the paper twice. The first time you wet it, you let the paint seep into the paper. And then once the shine is gone, I'm having a hard time talking and painting at the same time. I usually can't do that. Once the shine is gone on your first application of water, you wet it one more time. And this time wetting it, you leave it a little bit wet, a little wetter. And that's the wash that you work with your blues to get your sky in. Okay. Wetting it twice. The first time you wet the paper, gets into the fibers of the paper and holds the water and keeps it wet and damp a little bit longer. I think I've told you that little technique before, but anytime you rather wet twice, that's fine. It really gives you more time to get your color in. It's especially important if you're doing a sky that has more than one color. You want to keep it wet long enough to get in maybe some gray clouds or some stormy clouds or some sunset colors. Speaking of sunsets, the next picture in March is going to be a sunset. It's a lighthouse.
Oh, good. I love that.
Yeah, it's Nantucket Brant Point Lighthouse. I did some of it last night and I'm really liking it. It's going to be a fun one. So we got to let our bird dry. So it's going to take a few minutes. Mary Ann, yours will probably dry quick if you're up in the warm upstairs. We'll just let it dry. We can carefully do the eye because that's not touching anything. And we could do the brown feathers. So I just want to let it dry a little bit so you don't rest your hand on the wet paper. It's kind of hard to hold your hand over something, especially doing an eye. You want to be able to get right in close. So it's probably a better idea that we let it dry. Does anybody have any questions on any of the things we've covered so far, or comments or suggestions? Or Brenda, I'm still working on those boats and it wasn't coming out the way I liked it. So I am still working on it.
The next project you talked about with the lighthouse and the sun,
Yeah,
sunrise, will you be making some of those to sell in your daughter's shop?
the kits or
No, like I bought the truck that time.
yeah, I'm thinking about getting prints made. Yes.
I think you should do that.
Yeah, I think I will.
Good.
Yeah, thank you. If you have a blow dryer, you could maybe dry yours up a little bit, but I gotta wait anyway, so it's getting there. It's not bad. A lot of this bird is done wet on wet. the softness of the back and the head and the stomach area. So if you notice on your color print on the back of the bird from the head down into the midpoint of the middle part of the body and his back, it's a little mottled looking, and that's from tapping in the color, not so much wiping it right in and keeping it flat. It's dropped in spots and I let it burst a little bit and blend on the paper. A couple of different values. So we're going to give that a try. Instead of just filling in flat, we're going to try modeling it, and by dropping in little bits with a very small brush. You don't want to make it look polka dotted, but with a small brush and kind of controlling it a little bit gives it some different values and softness. One thing I mentioned in the instructions was to darken the pencil lines on the feathers. Did everybody get to do that? If you have not darkened the pencil lines on the outlines of the feathers, you might want to do that. You don't have to make them super dark, but we're going to be putting a wash of gray over all of the feathers, a gray brown over all of the feathers. And we still want the pencil lines to show through that wash. So if your outlines of feathers are fairly light, you might want to go over them with a little bit darker pencil, so they'll show through the first wash. And then the white is put on top of the pencil lines. So don't make them too dark, but not too light. Everybody has white, I hope. I think I gave everybody a tube of white. As far as using white, I'm finding I'm doing that a little bit more. I really like using the white gouache. As far as using white, there's some different options. You can use white gouache, Gouache, which is just an opaque watercolor. You can't find that at Michael's anymore. They don't sell the individual tubes. That's something you'd have to go online or go down to probably CC Lowell's in Worcester or something like that. I don't even think Hobby Lobby has individual tubes of the gouache. But the other options are Chinese white, which is ordinary watercolor, but of course it's opaque because it's white. So the only difference between the gouache and the Chinese white is that you might have to use more applications of the Chinese white. It's not quite as dense as the gouache. The other option is acrylic, either white acrylic from a tube, or you can buy just one of those little craft bottles of white acrylic, the little bottles that snap open at the top. They're very small, like 2-ounce bottles. White acrylic, those are really cheap. Or white ink, Liquitex white acrylic ink. That's what I've been using because I like the coverage. It seems to just need 1 or 2 applications to be bright enough white. So Liquitex white acrylic ink. They do, I believe they do have that at Michael's. And then a little bottle of white acrylic or a tube of white acrylic. The only disadvantage to the acrylic is once you get it on there, it's going to stay there. The other whites, the ink and the acrylic white paint, once you get it on, it's going to stay there. The gouache and the Chinese white will move around and you can lift it off. So that's my speech for the day. Okay, I think mine's dry enough now to do the branch. I'm switching over to a number 6 brush, 4, 5, or 6 round. Something close to that is probably good, but you can use anything that you're comfortable with. I am using a round brush. One key to using brushes, when you're painting organic nature things, rounded things, a round brush is good. When you're doing architectural objects, straight lines or washes, the square flat brushes are good. Just a kind of a guideline. I mean, that you don't have to go by that, but that's just how I decide usually. So the branch is a gray brown. So it's ultramarine blue and burnt umber. I know some of you have Van Dyke brown. A couple of you have Van Dyke brown because they were out of burnt umber at the time. So blue and brown, making a gray. To make a gray, it's about 50-50. Just about as much blue as brown. The more blue you add, the grayer it will be. And I'm going to start right on, well, I'll give you the option. You can wet the branch first with clean water if you want, or you can paint it on directly on the dry paper with a light wash. I think I'll go for the light wash on the dry paper. And I'm going to start at the bottom here, right on the foot.
The other color, what was the other color besides ultramarine blue?
Ultramarine blue and Van Dyke brown, Louise.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's what you have for brown. You don't have the burnt umber.
Oh, here it is. Okay, there you
So I'm going to paint directly on the dry paper a nice light wash of gray.
that mute.
I am avoiding the foot only because it's easy enough to do, but you could go over the foot if you want to, if it's harder to avoid it. And then the other side, I'm going to make your wash nice and watery. When you're painting on dry paper, always keep your paint really wet, unless you're doing dry brush techniques. Keep your wash really wet. Flow, let it flow. And the other side here, mine's a little on the blue side, but I can change that later if I need to. You might like doing the technique of wetting the paper first. It just doing it this way saves one step, but that's not a problem. And then the branch going out and the little broken piece here. Oops, I got a boo-boo, so I'm going to make another branch. So a light wash. Now, while this wash is still wet, you're going to take a darker value. Same colors, just a darker value. And a little more on the brown side. Just a little more brown. And you're going to take it, I have to turn my board here to show you where we're going here. There we go. I want to run my darker value along the bottom edge of the branch. Right down along. The paper's still damp. If it isn't, we'll have to shade a little bit, which I'm finding I might have to do. But if it's damp, you're gonna get a nice soft transition from the medium or the dark to the light. Over here, it dried a little too much. So if you see here, I have a hard edge between the dark and the light. So I'm taking a brush that's just got a little bit of water on it and lightly dragging the dark into the light, just hardly touching it and blending it out a little bit to soften it. Same thing over here. I ended up with a hard edge because the paper was too dry. So if you get a hard edge, it's not necessarily bad to have a hard edge shaded like a shadow, but if you want to soften that and have a softer transition, like I got down at this edge, I have a soft transition, soft edge between the dark and the light. Just take a light pressure on just a damp brush, a little bit of water on it, and just go over the edge where the dark meets the light and hardly touch it, just feather it out a little bit. Now we have a more of a slow transition from the dark to the light. Now I added some white paint at the end. We can talk about that as we get towards the end of the picture. I did touch in some white on the top edge for a little bit more contrast, but we'll work on that later. You don't have to worry about that right now. But if you're looking at the color print and it looks really opaque and white on the top edge of the branch, that's because I did add some white ink. So now the branch has to dry. And how are we doing on time?
Linda, can I ask a question?
Yes. Yes.
Hi, it's Maureen. I just
Hi.
finished my branch and
Uh-huh.
I need to do that bottom outline. What color was that you used again?
It was the same two colors, the ultramarine blue and the burnt umber, or Van Dyke brown, whichever you have for brown. And it's just
Okay,
it's just mixed a little bit darker, so you don't use quite as much water with it to make it a little darker. But the same two colors,
Okay.
the blue and the brown, the same two colors, just not as much
Thank you.
water, so it comes out darker.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. The next color you want to have ready is a little wash of raw sienna and burnt sienna. More, well, I would say 50-50, raw sienna and burnt sienna. And mix them together on the palette into a thin wash, light wash. on the light side, also quite, you know, a fairly good amount of water. So it's light. Don't forget the ratios of water to paint. The more water, the lighter your color. We don't add white paint to lighten our colors. We add water to lighten the colors.
All I have is a burnt sienna.
Okay, do you have some yellow, any yellow?
Yep.
Just use a little bit of the yellow with it.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let me shut myself up.
So we've got a mix of raw sienna and burnt sienna, about 50-50, as far as same amount of each color. And this is the shading for, I'm going a little off the directions. I'm doing it in a little different order. But we're gonna do the stomach first, because that's a little easier than the patch behind the eye, beside the eye. Look at your color print and notice that the this color has a soft edge, first of all, where it goes into the white. It has a soft edge, which means you're painting on damp paper. And be aware that you need to leave the white, okay? You're gonna wanna leave a little bit more white than what the finished product looks like. Because as it dries, it's gonna spread into the white area. So you wanna leave a little larger area of white when you're dropping in your raw sienna color. So we're gonna wet the stomach area right from the neck, under the neck, right in the neck and down into the stomach. Around the feathers, you don't need to put it in. You do need to wet it all, even where the white is. Otherwise you won't get a soft edge, because you need the raw sienna to blend into the damp paper. So you need to wet everything, even though you see white. You want that wet to start with. Now I'm going to give it a little bit of time to absorb. And if you're using like a number 5 or 6 to wet it, switch to a smaller brush to drop your color in. We're going to be here concentrating on controlling how the color spreads. And on damp paper, if it's really wet and you drop more color into the wet, it's going to explode and just go into the wet paper. One way to control it is to use a smaller brush so you don't unload as much color. And the other thing is to use the paint in a drier consistency, which is a little bit difficult to do when you want a light color. It's hard to keep it light and not have it watery, because we need it watery to make it light. So switch to a smaller brush so you don't unload too much color, and start right at the neck with just a tiny bit. And then keep coming down into the stomach. It's not quite dark enough. It's going to dry lighter too, so dries about 30% lighter. So drop it in. Now I got too much burnt sienna. Drop it in with a small brush. Follow along the edge of the feathers, just make a line for now along the edge of the feathers and see how much it flows outwards. If it's not flowing out too much, that's a good thing. Then you can add a little bit more past a line. Just drop in a tiny bit more. And leave your white paper and leave it a little bit bigger. If it's really wet and spreading, leave your white a little bit bigger than you actually want it to be, because as it dries, it is going to and get a little bit, it'll get smaller as it dries, but it's going to spread too much. So that's your white and raw sienna, burnt sienna stomach area. Small brush. You won't have any problem controlling the spreading if you use a really small brush. That's key to controlling spreading on wet. Use a really small brush. Look at the color print again too to get your shape. Shape's not crucial as long as you've left enough white. Can be a little different than mine as far as the shape of the raw sienna, but the white is important on the edge.
Hey, Linda, this is Cheryl. I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So on this part we're doing right now, when I look at my color print, it almost looks like slightly orangey red. So,
Yeah, that's just the color. Our printer was acting up.
okay, so the color we're really going for is more kind of like that sienna, the mixture of the siennas, not so much the reddish.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, our printer really did a bad job on color copies this month, especially on the water pump. Some of them came out way too red. So hopefully, as I'm explaining the colors.
Yep. I just wanted to make sure I had the shade right.
Yeah, more raw sienna, burnt sienna. I think it's time for a new printer. We've had this one a long time, so. And that'll be fun. Okay, there's a little bit more of this color in the bird's head or below his eye. In order to get that soft edged again, we need to wet a larger area than what the color shows, than where the color actually is. So I'm taking a number 5 brush or 6 brush. I'm going to wet the head about from the top of the eye down to the back and under the eye. So from the mid, you've got a pencil line at the top of the eye going from left to right. And then you've got a pencil line at the top of the back, right through here. Wet it from this pencil line up at the top down to this pencil line that goes across the back. So just get a little bit of water. If you look at the color print and see where the raw sienna, burnt sienna color is, you're gonna just wet a little larger area than that, so you get a soft edge again. So I'm gonna wet that, give it a little bit of time to absorb the water so that it doesn't flow too much. And then I'm gonna take the mix again, the raw sienna and the burnt sienna mixed together. And I'm gonna drop that in. I would say it's like the side of the head, but it's really below the eye and before the back midpoint of the body starts. Right in where those pencil lines are. Right up just about to the eye. You've got a little patch of this color. And just let it float out. The blue's going to cover the edge of it. So you don't have to worry about the outside end where you stop it on the head. Let it just flow outwards and then the blue will cover it afterwards. And we want to let that dry. A lot of drying times in this one. How are we doing on time for 15? Can't see without my glasses. Or 13. Okay, good. And we want to let that dry. And while that's drying, let's do the eye. Important part is the highlight in the eye, the little white speck. It's in the top half, a little bit, not right square in the middle, a little to the right. Payne's gray, really dark. If you can't leave that little white speck, don't worry, we can do white paint later, or we can chip it out with an X-Acto knife. If you want to do it just that way, you can fill it in all Payne's gray and chip the highlight, chip the paint out with a X-Acto knife afterwards. If you're not comfortable getting a little speck left there. But take Payne's gray, nice and dark, so not too much water mixed with it this time, so it's nice and dark. And we're going to fill in you have two circles drawn there. One, the outside pencil circle is the white area. The inside line is around the pupil of the eye. So we're filling in the inside circle. very carefully paint it in. I usually start by outlining that little reflection and leaving it, and then painting in the rest. And my hand is shaky, so it's not going to be real good. Okay. Okay, it's pretty good size eye. Don't make it too big. Leave your white line around. You've got to have a white edge around it. So don't make it too big. Stay within your pencil line. But he does have a nice big eye. And while you're using Payne's Gray, you can take it in a lighter value, which means add some water to it and make on your palette, make a little puddle of light gray. So Payne's Gray with water, more water added, and paint in the beak, light gray. I know it's darker in the end, but we're going to put a wash of light gray on the beak first. And just let that dry. Very light. So if you can't leave the little speck, no worries. We'll just, you can take a razor blade, single edge razor blade or X-Acto knife and chip out a little tiny spot. An X-Acto knife is a nice little item to add to your supply kit. And I think as far as time goes, we've got time to do the back. And that's what I was talking about, getting it modeled looking, kind of just soft and different values. So what we're going to do is wet the head up in here and the back down to the feather line. So I'm going to put a little line right here. Down to those where the feathers start to be drawn out. And we're going to do it down into the back, in between the feathers, okay? See, there's one section of feathers on the right side, and another section goes from the left over to the rest of the body. Down between the two sets of feathers, the ones on the right for the wing that's only partially showing, and the other wing that is fully showing. Down in between those is some ultramarine blue right at the bottom. So I'm going to start with that. Do you see where I'm at on that? Right in between the feathers, not on them, but right in between them, there's a little band of ultramarine blue that just goes down into the feathers. and goes up, right up to the rounded feather right here. Okay, if you want to look closely at where I put the blue in. It's just a little band of blue that goes in between from this rounded feather right here and in between the wing that's partially showing and the full wing. There's some ultramarine blue right in between. Does that show up good enough on my painting, what I'm painting? Okay. Now I did that with my little brush again, but now I'm gonna keep that little brush handy because I'm gonna use that for dropping in my other color. I'm gonna wet it with my number 6 brush. And I'm gonna wet the head right above the eye. Right up to the edge. Right to the pencil line. I'm going over that sienna color a little bit. It's not going to disturb it. You can go right over it. And down into the back. And over towards the front side. And down to where the lines for the individual feathers start. I have drawn in a line there to show you where to stop, right where the feathers start to be drawn is where you're going down to with water. And then down in towards that ultramarine blue, right up to that ultramarine blue patch that we put in between. If you get some of this color on the feathers, it's not a problem. So we're going to take gray again, ultramarine blue. There's 2 options. You can use Payne's gray, or you can use ultramarine blue with burnt umber. Burnt umber and ultramarine blue is a little softer. That's what I'm using. But you can use Payne's gray because Payne's gray has blue in it. And he is a blue-gray bird. So in this case, my gray, mixing a gray with ultramarine blue and burnt umber, I'm using a little more blue to make it grayer. And I'm going to switch to my small brush again, which is the number 2 or number 1. And I'm going to drop in color into that wet spot that I just made. And see how I'm just dabbing it in? Not stroking it flat so that it sits, you know, like a flat wash. I'm dabbing it and I'm leaving little bits of white, and some places I'm putting it in a little darker, but I'm not stroking it out. I'm just dropping it with the brush, dabbing it in. And it gives it a nice soft look. Some of the white is going to end up showing through. That's fine. Little bits of white is good. All the way down into where you put the ultramarine blue, blend it in with the blue. Into the back. And it shouldn't look polka dotted. You have to control it a little bit. You have to, you know, kind of push them together, push the little spots together a little bit, but let them flow and blend on their own. Up into the head, same thing. And into the forehead. Some gray blue. Don't go over the white ring, but go right up to it. Now I'm still wet enough to add a little bit darker value of this. I'm gonna take even a little Payne's gray will do it if you don't want to mix up more blue and brown. Just another little bit of darker gray, and it's still wet enough, at least mine is, to drop in just a little bit more. Not everywhere, just little bits here and there. And see how you get a nice soft look that way? Is that working for you? Good. Makes it look feathery and soft. Always softness comes from working on damp paper. And let's see, in a few more minutes. Yeah, a couple more minutes. Why don't we just paint the feet in while we're using Payne's gray or gray? You can use either Payne's gray or you can use the gray and brown mixture, but very dark. I suggest Payne's gray because you can get that nice and dark easily. So Payne's gray with a little bit of water, just enough to move it around, and just paint in the feet. Little claw around the side here. Up into the body. Up to the body. And then the claw coming down around the branch. And the other side, the leg. And onto the, touching the branch and coming around the branch with the claw. I don't know if they're called claws or should study birds more. I paint enough of them. And notice the back one, the one on the right, the branch goes in front of the foot. So all you see is the leg, and then below the branch, you see the pointy claw, and the branch goes through. Look at your color print, or he'll look like he's gonna fall off the branch. Okay, I guess we did pretty good for time today. We got quite a bit done. Next week, we'll do the washes on the feathers in the browns and grays and the white lines. And he'll be good to go. And then we'll start the water pump. So you want to have the water pump transferred and ready to go for part of next week's class. Don't forget, if you want the Indian red, a tube of Indian red, if you can stop by and pick one up, I'll have them at the desk. I wish I had had them Monday with the kits. That was my plan, and they're always really fast service, but this time they weren't. Any questions?
No, I like these paintings.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I never know what to
Yeah,
pick.
fun. I like it.
Good.
Good.
I never know
Thank you.
what to pick.
I know. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Linda. That was great.
Okay, good. Worked okay for you first time, Luann and Maureen?
Yeah.
My
Oh.
very first time.
Yeah, that's what Luann was telling me. That's good.
I'm hooked.
Good. That's what we like to hear.
That's easy to happen.
Yeah,
My branch came out
Thanks,
so
Linda.
dark.
you're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Have
Bye-bye.
a good,
Bye.
have a
Bye,
great
Nancy.
night.
Bye, Marianne.
Hi,
Bye.
Bye.
how do I leave? Okay.
My poor branch is dark as anything. Well, what the heck?